I'm pulling up the discussion points from.
It's everybody's favorite time of the week, isn't it? Nolan Axton, Wes Mason here with you. Clay's out of town. Between Two Sheets, Season 2, Episode 3.
It feels good to be recording with Clay gone again.
It does.
It seems right, because he doesn't come to the work nights either.
Right. What's up with that, right? Like, the guy finds excuses to get out of not just paint night, but he's not going to be here for lines tomorrow night either.
Yes.
Gosh.
Which, we have been taking advantage of, though, and we already blame things on him.
We
tonight.
do, yeah.
It was nice.
And I don't think he knows about it yet either. He'll just know, like, week one of curling, and we're like, it was Clay's fault.
Yeah, it was Clay. Clay did.
Everybody at the club's going to know it except for him.
Like, hey, Clay, why did you do such a bad job painting the ice? Well, it's really hard when you're in a different state.
But we do got some exciting news. Clay's not actually gone.
Yes. We have overcome serious hurdles to get where we are now. And with that, we have the ability to phone.
We're gonna
people
phone
in.
Yeah,
Yes.
This is what's gonna take us over the hump. Now we're already North Dakota's #1 curling podcast. Mm-hmm. This is gonna take us up to like.
You forgot to mention we're the #1 curling podcast in the state of curling.
In the state of
because we
curling.
want to start adding that in too, which is a shame. We just got our logo made.
Yeah. Well, next year we can do it.
Okay.
But, yeah. So this is gonna take us to maybe a national level. I don't know. We'll see how far it goes.
Maybe international, interplanetary.
All right. So our first phone call.
Hit
with
it.
The one and only.
Hit it.
Clay Feldner. See if he picks up.
Oh, you can hear the ringing perfect.
I know, it's awesome.
Hello?
Hi, is this Clay Feldner?
Yes.
I'm trying to reach you about your car's extended warranty.
You don't sell those anymore.
Oh,
Yeah.
darn
Sorry, I
it.
forgot.
Right,
Yeah,
sorry. Clay, it's
you
the
don't sell
I
boys.
thought you're. Yeah. I thought you were going to try and sell me another car.
No, I don't do that anymore. I'm
Oh.
I'm out of the
Really?
game, as you could say.
I would say you didn't sell cars mostly. You sold extended warranties, right? You're the finance guy.
I was the finance guy.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
went legally service contract.
Oh,
because the
sorry.
warranty comes free with the vehicle.
Oh.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's what I learned. That's one of the things I've taken away from
That's
my
a day
4
one.
years
Yes.
at the car dealership.
Legally service contract.
Clay, how can you hear us? Is everything good?
Not so bad. Just calling for my nice Dodge Challenger rental right now. I'm about to go in and eat some Mexican food.
Ooh, Mexican 2 days
Yeah,
in a row.
you're I don't know if you want to disclose your undisclosed location, but you are substantially closer to Mexico than in North Dakota, which is nice.
Oh yeah, I'm in Houston right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Getting that good food.
Doing a little traveling. You down there for work? Yes.
Yes.
Right on.
Yes.
Yes.
Good.
Yes for Hess.
If anybody from work's listening, I did not get a Dodge Challenger rental.
Well,
I was just kidding.
Yeah.
Does it make you feel more like? Is it a V8?
It's not. We
No,
asked.
it's
Oh,
it's really
Yes,
not.
Remember?
Then you don't
It-
have to.
in
You don't
all
have
honesty,
to be
it doesn't
ashamed.
matter.
I
We
mean,
tried to have a long conversation about Hemis, and I was trying to remember if that was a race 6.4 Hemi. But yeah.
I think-
Anyways, that's not the podcast that we're on. I
No,
guess. So,
no.
yeah.
We're here to talk about curling as always. So.
We are. So Nolan knows the topic. Clay, are you ready for our topic tonight that you're going to muddle through with us?
I'm scared to ask.
We are going to discuss USCA and GNCC curling, and not so much like a full recap of everything with that, but just like kind of we're going to hit on some of the drama with it because it's pretty juicy. And I follow like some curling stuff online, like a lot of people, just constantly online. So I got to see a lot of it like play out in real time, and like, there were a lot of letters that got published, and people like making moral or philosophical stands, and there was some big shakeouts that actually affected us as curlers at like the club level too. So that's what our topic's going to be. So buckle in.
Yeah, and just a quick disclaimer too. This is completely informative. It's an unbiased opinion.
No, they're biased opinions. But we should say,
Right.
I should say, I'm going to have some biased opinions, but I think we should clearly state that these are our opinions and they are not reflective of the Minot Curling Club, the Minot Curling Club Board of Directors as a whole, even though all of us are on that board. So these are our own views, thoughts, and takes on it. They do not represent anyone else or any other organization except for us in the podcast. So
Throw out a Monday Night Football disclaimer. Any dissemination or reproduction of this program may be held against you in a court of law.
no, go for it. Go for it. I don't care. I'm flattered. If you disseminate us, I'm flattered.
I'm actually surprised I remembered that.
So to speak on that, I'm not a journalist. I run a podcast with a couple bros from my curling club, and I got most of my information from things like the Reddit forums. Is a great place for juicy drama. NPR did an article on it. Medium did an article on it. There is a lot of information out there. USCA has their own press releases. GNCC has their press releases. So you can go and you can read all of these things online on your own and draw your own conclusions about who's right, wrong. I think it's just interesting, seeing how we go from the club level and where we fit nationally and internationally, and how things that affect top level athletes sometimes do eventually filter down to us.
Well, there was a whole lot that went on too. Like you said, it wasn't just necessarily one thing that went on. There was a bunch of stuff that kind of happened in a small span of time, correct?
Yeah, there was a bunch of things, and there was kind of two really distinct things happening at the same time,
Right.
So I think to back up here, let's lay some groundwork. So first off, USCA is the United States Curling Association, and GNCC is the Grand National Curling Club.
The USCA that's the blanket organization that covers most of the clubs in the United States, correct?
Yes, the USCA Curling they are the governing body for, I would say, competitive curling in the United States. They have ties with the U.S. Olympic Committee, which is the U.S. and Paralympic Committee. So they're our official curling, channel to get up into the Olympics. We as members of the Minot Curling Club are actually members of United States Curling as well. That. I'm just for our benefit of our viewers. So that's kind of the groundwork, right? And, I'm going to start with how we used to do things when I started here in 2016. So when I started at the Minot Curling Club, we all paid $34 a year as a club member of Minot to the USCA. So your Minot dues would be $240, $34 of that Minot would take, and we would send to the Dakota Territory Association. So we're part of the Dakota Territory Association for Curling. That's our regional body. And then the USCA Curling is made up of these different regional bodies that have clubs inside of them. And then they would send the check to USCA for the $34, And so with that, we're supposed to get benefits from being a USCA member. So, they're the ones that certify coaches and officials, so if you go to a big fancy USCA bonspiel, they'll have officials there doing timekeeping, that kind of stuff. Clay, are you backing up?
Are you getting carjacked, Clay?
Sorry. I just be quiet. I was trying to turn the engine off to go an accessory. It didn't work.
Don't put your foot on the brake.
Yes. So, anyways, another thing with GNCC. So to give some facts here, GNCC is where are they headquartered out of? Why am I blanking?
I believe it's somewhere out in New York, isn't it?
Yeah, they're an East Coast one. I don't know where their actual headquarters is. They've been around forever, though. They are founded in 1867, I think. USCA Curling as a body got started in 1958. So USCA Curling started 1867, 1958 when USCA Curling became a thing. They were, I want to say, one of the founding regional bodies, because GNCC joined USCA Curling in 1958, the first year they started. So they have been with them forever. They also have a lot of pull in the curling world because they have, I want to say before all of this, they had 6,000 members, and there was only 15,000 members of USCA total. So they had a good third of all curlers were curling under GNCC clubs. So to start it all out there, I don't know, maybe I should just cut to the chase. GNCC actually is no longer part of USCA Curling. So they did separate here. That was in 2022 in July, I think. I have it in front of me. So they did eventually split. Those splits came from a couple of different spots here, and I'm going to start with, I think, probably the least important one, but maybe the juicier part of the story about what kind of started GNCC leaving. So we as in USCA Curling, which we're a part of, so I'll say we, in February of 2020, right before the COVID pandemic, they hired a new CEO. So they hired this guy named Jeff Plush. So Jeff Plush used to be the National Women's Soccer League president. So that was what his qualifications were. And they brought him on because they were like, hey, this is a guy with experience managing like other sports. You know, he's got experience writing deals with TV networks, you know, because the big push was to grow curling, right? You know, we had the Olympics there. People were excited about it. I believe, what was it, the 18? Help me out with the year when...
1867?
No, 2018 when we won gold, right? Was it 2018 the year they went to the Olympics?
I erased that from my memory. I believe it was...
Sorry, we as in the United States, not 30
I had
Canadians.
nothing to do with that.
Yes.
I believe so, yes.
So, you know, everybody wanted to grow the sport, right? So that move seemed to make sense at the time, right? I think most clubs were supportive of that. So the next fun thing that happened was a full year later, you know, COVID starts, you know, we're having issues at the club level. So fall of 2021, our U.S. Attorney General, Sally Yates, started an investigation into sexual misconduct and abuse allegations with the National Women's Soccer League for the time period that Jeff Plush was CEO in. So it wasn't necessarily like all encompassing because Jeff left the National Women's Soccer Organization in 2017. So the U.S. Attorney General starts an investigation into that. So then we wait for a long time, right? So this investigation starts and the investigation is public knowledge. So in that same time frame, you know, GNCC as a body, and they weren't the only ones doing this, you know, they published a letter asking for Jeff Plush to take a leave of absence while the investigation was going on because he is, you know, the head of USCA curling. At this point, I think his title was CEO. But they were looking into, you know, his conduct, the whole organization's conduct during the time he was running the National Women's Soccer League. So that goes ignored, right? So Jeff does not take a leave of absence. There's essentially no, I want to say repercussions for him at this point, right? So another year goes by here, and there's some other things happening, which we'll get to. The Yates investigation is published in October of 2022. So the Yates investigation, it's a long read. I read part of it like when it came out because it was hot news, but it's very dry. You know, it's an attorney general investigation. But essentially what they said was Jeff Plush did not respond to any of the contacts that they sent him to like interview about his time and like what the experiences were in there. So the only way they had like Jeff's name and statements in the document was they were copies of like old emails and stuff that he had sent or other communications he's had or like quotes from other people about him. So he didn't participate in the investigation, and they clearly stated in there that they contacted him and he did not contact them back to set up any kind of time.
Well, it's the best way to cover something up is to just not talk about it.
Yeah, just pretend like it didn't. Yeah, that works great.
Yeah.
Unless it's like already in paper, you know, and there were other people. So that's all going on, right? So that doesn't sound good. And like the Yates report was pretty definitive. Like there was abuse going on and sexual misconduct is how I would characterize it. You know, coaches were, you know, imposing themselves on their female players, and I don't think that that's a good dynamic. And I think they definitively had like that Jeff was made aware of it, and I think there's a case with one of the coaches that got fired from a team. Jeff allowed him to get like rehired at another organization, so he like got fired from a soccer team and another one picked him up, and they just let all that happen, right? And I think that that's probably not what you want to do if you're in charge of an organization. You know, like you'd be like, oh hey, this person is an abuser of some kind, right? I probably don't want them in my organization anymore. And there was none of that happened, right? They just let all this stuff happen. So it was super passive, right? Like I don't think that there was a lot of evidence of like Jeff specifically, he didn't like tell people like, hey, don't talk about that, but just, you know, things would get reported to him and then they never really went further. You know, you're supposed to do that. That's like, go back to how we're board members of USCA curling. We have to all do that safe sport, you know, that talks about like, you know, hey, you know, these are signs of abuse, these are things that are abusive, this is what misconduct is, you know, like don't do these things. And this is like, you know, if you're experience it or see it, like these are how you should go report it, deal with it, handle it, right? So we have that in curling already. Like that was something I think that's been going on since even before 2020. I remember doing those. So we've had that for a long time. And the other part of this is I want to say around like 2019, 2020, USCA Curling started a diversity, equity, and inclusion like task force. So they got like volunteers who were looking into like what can curling do to, do better at the DEIA stuff, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And they were pretty vocal when all this was going on with the investigation and USCA saying like, hey, we don't think like Jeff Plush is like a good guy for this organization because, he didn't do what we think is the right thing, at this other time when he was running, the National Women's Soccer League. And all of that was promptly ignored too. So that was even like USCA ignoring like its own task force recommendations as well. So that report comes out October 2022, like a week later after the report's published, like USCA published another communication that said like, essentially, we stand behind Jeff. They're like, yeah, we're satisfied with his conduct. We don't think that he's been open with us. He's been responsive with us. Like we think he's doing the right things here, and he's still a good fit for the organization. So they kept with him, right? Eventually, he does get pushed out, but that comes later. And now we have Mr. How do you say his name? Do you know Gemmel, the curler? Is it Gemmel? We gotta look that up here. I might actually have to do a pause and cut here. So.
There's a new guy running things.
There's a new guy running things, and he was when Jeff left, he was made the interim CEO, and then he got eventually elected to be the actual USCA curling CEO. And why am I missing his name right now? Give me two shakes here. I want to say it's Dean Gemmel, but I am not 100%.
So the gist right now, like a lot of stuff is happening behind the scenes.
Yes.
That people didn't know about going into the hiring of this dude. This dude even becoming part of USCA.
Yes, I was looking up. It is Dean Gemmel. So yes. Yep. So all this stuff is going on, and this, like I said, GNCC was one of the vocal ones pretty early that like, hey, this isn't how we like want to represent our sport. I don't think this is the leadership direction we should be taking. And they were pretty well ignored, when that was going on. So the separate thing, now we'll get back into, I think, more of the reason why GNCC eventually left was the COVID pandemic happened in 2020. As we're all aware, we cut our season short. We started late that year. We lost a bunch of members. We had modified curling rules or asking people like not shake hands. Everybody remembers the pandemic. It sucked, and it was hard to keep your curling organization going. I know we were really struggling here. We were trying to look at ways to save costs, raise revenue. We were trying to do the same exact amount of stuff. Like our utilities don't go down if we have half the curlers. Like we still have the same expenses. So, like how can we make that money up? So that was hard for us at the club level, and it was hard for all the clubs around the country, to keep going during the pandemic there. So with that, there were clubs that were deciding that they couldn't afford to pay the USCA dues. Like I said earlier, at that time, USCA dues worth like $34 a person. So, if you're a small club, and you're charging a couple $100 for dues, that's a substantial amount of your revenue that you're then passing back on to USCA curling. And then we get into like more of the stuff where I'm going to say I'm biased about is like, what does USCA curling give you back? I said at the beginning here, all the things they're supposed to do, like the coaches training and the officials and promote events and like, get us in the Olympics and get curling airtime and advertise the sport. But like, what do you actually get at the local level? So in your tenure here, Nolan, have you ever met a USCA official of any kind?
I've never once seen a member of the USCA in mind. I'm not to say it's a bad thing. I don't blame them for not coming out here.
Well, and we don't host like big national events or anything. We hardly host state events, but we do some of that as well. We had a guy come one time while I've been here, and he did like a level 1 instructor's course, and I took it, right? So I was a level 1 like certified instructor. But like those guys are fewer and farther between. Like they're around, there's some in Bismarck and stuff, but it's always like trying to coordinate with them come up, and USCA curling isn't exactly like tripping over themselves, like offer these things. They have them. We're fortunate we live by Minnesota. USCA curling's headquartered out of Eagan, Minnesota. So there are like coaches clinics and, ice making clinics and that kind of stuff like within a day's drive of us. So depending on where you live, you might not have like any local options. So anyways, getting distracted here talking about USCA curling. So things were tough in the COVID pandemic, and there were clubs that were deciding to not pay dues, clubs that, were paying late because like us, like we pushed our season start date back in 2020. We didn't start till January. So, dues are due in December and we don't start curling till January. Like we don't have any money because we don't have any players.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong here, fellas, but I believe we also missed our money-making bond spill that year, too, as well. We didn't have a shirt sleeve.
Yeah, we didn't have our shirt sleeve. Yep. And that's a nice way for us to pad the checkbook at the end of the year. So, we were coming in tough there. I believe we paid late that year, if I remember correctly. We didn't collect dues until, I think end of January. We didn't send them in until probably February then.
Clay,
so we were late.
On that?
Yeah, do you remember? I think he's gone.
I think he died. Clay, you with us?
Yeah, the
I
phone
am,
says it's
but
not-
I didn't hear what you asked there.
Oh, I was just little insight. Like you handle dues a little bit more than Wes and I do. In 2020, where we were behind on our dues due to COVID.
We did not receive, right before COVID, we had, I would say, our peak level of curlers over, past couple of decades, I would say.
It was like 260 if I remember right. But
Yeah, we had Wednesday and Thursday both completely maxed out in terms of league. I can't remember if you had the Airbase League that year. But they're a different membership anyway. We did not have the shirt sleeve there. So that obviously did go into the financials. And then the following year, no, we did not have, I don't know if it was.
well, we didn't start till
just say half.
January.
Let's say half.
Yeah, well, our question was more, Clay, when did we pay our dues? Because normally we pay our dues, like in January. This was before, right? Because we'll get to that. They changed the membership models here. But
We paid
used to
in
send the check in like January.
February. I don't recall them being overly strict in it, but paying in January and February in the past wasn't exactly out of the norm. So
Yeah,
if
there
they
wasn't
gave
like
us
a
month-long
consequence for coming in. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't used to pay our dues until January anyway. So
So,
So we made her through on time on COVID, at least.
yeah, we did. So with that, the GNCC as a regional body, we're part of the Dakota Territory Association. Clay, can you help me out here? Do we pay the Dakota Territory any money, or is that just floating along for free?
Mark handles that, but I think we do pay them something.
It's like a couple, like $1 or something a member. It's really cheap, right? If we give them anything, if they get anything directly from us, it's not a ton. I thought they used to just skim off our USCA ones, but anyways.
I thought it was like $500 or something, but yeah.
Yeah, which in the scope of our club, that's a couple bucks a member, right? So if we had 250, $2 a person is what essentially goes to the Dakota Territory. So GNCC, they had a little bit more substantial dues. I can't remember what their rates used to be, but to be a member of the GNCC regional body, it was something like $10, $15 a member a year on top of your USCA dues. So when COVID hit, GNCC made the decision. They're like, well, we're pretty solvent here. We understand this is a hard time for our club, so we're going to waive our member dues in 2020, and I think they did it in 21 as well, saying hey, you don't have to pay GNCC dues. We're just going to keep floating by on our reserves, whatever. Make things work, and they'll take the pressure off of our clubs that are struggling. USCA curling didn't do anything like that during COVID. I remember being on the board here, and we still had to come up with the money to pay USCA, and it was a real pain. So those things are happening. And with that, GNCC also, they weren't pushing their clubs to send their USCA dues in. So clubs were making that decision hey, I don't think we can really afford to be USCA members. I don't feel like we're getting enough back from USCA to justify spending it. So instead, we're not going to pay our USCA dues. Ipso facto, we're not going to be a part of the USCA except through being a part of the GNCC, which is part of the USCA. So USCA Curling was pushing GNCC to force their clubs to either sign up or kick them out of their regional body, because there was a rule, a policy in place at the USCA level that said to be a regional member, 95% of your clubs and curlers underneath them have to be USCA curling members. So you can't have the Minot Club can't be USCA members, but the Bismarck Club isn't if there were only two clubs in the Dakota Territory, and they were both members, because then it'd be 50% weren't. You wouldn't hit the 95% criteria. So GNCC said, we're not going to make our clubs do that. They're like, we're not going to kick clubs out if they don't pay their USCA dues, because like we can't force them to write us a check for that. Like we'll take their GNCC money, but we're not going to force them to pay USCA dues, and we're not going to kick them out if they don't. And so that kind of brought to a head this whole issue with USCA curling. They were saying, well, you guys have to hit 95% or we're going to remove you as a regional body. GNCC was saying, no, we're not going to do that. It's not the right thing to do. It's not the curling way, And USCA eventually, it came to a head in July of 2022. USCA board voted to remove GNCC from the USCA curling memberships. They kicked them out, right? And that was big news. And so with that, they started making changes, right? So I got to look it up here. When did Jeff Plush resign from USCA curling? Because that's important. I don't have it wrote down.
And just real quick, I guess, while Wes is looking that up, Clay, we've been talking about USCA and what they give us back. We touched on it very, very briefly as far as being part of USCA curling. What does USCA actually provide us as a club, a member club?
So in terms of importance to your average club member in Minot, the primary thing that USCA curling provides us is an insurance policy for the club and members. I'm not an insurance agent. I don't know if we've shopped around everywhere, but that is the primary value and need for our club, is to have that in place for our members before we start curling. I do believe we get a pretty good deal on that overall. On top of the insurance policy, and once again, that's primary concern, then there are benefits to members, that are more related to if you decide to compete in a state or national level. Right.
It allows you the eligibility to curl in a USCA sanctioned event if it was club nationals, if you wanted to go take on the hot dog eaters and Schuster's team. You're allowed to do that.
Yes, exactly. And then I'm there, and on top of that, then there's just, there's some discounts, there's the newsletters, the magazine, and a couple other benefits that are a little less known about, but are nevertheless present.
Right.
Yeah. And I don't have a big issue with like USCA curling as an entity. I think that it is important to have, a body that's steering the ship for everybody, right? Like, hey, we want to try out a new rules change. Like, somebody's got to facilitate these events. Somebody's got to do certifications. Somebody's got to, push for things like safe sport and, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Like, they're ostensibly doing things that I like, right? So with that, I did find Jeff Plush was also October of 2022. October 2022 was a big year in USCA curling and GNCC here. So Jeff ended up resigning at the end of 2022. So he resigned. And so when all this was going on, the board of USCA curling kicked him out in July of 2022. That decision, though, had to get ratified by a voting member body, which I believe we could have, as like Minot Curling Club, could have voted in, but I don't think any of us attended that meeting. So the board body, not the board, the member body in October of 22 did ratify that GNCC removal. I couldn't find anything on this when I was researching today for this, but I remember online seeing that there were clubs that were upset about that vote in October because their club wasn't in good standing, so they had like paid dues late or something, or hadn't paid the year before, and so USCA curling wasn't allowing them a vote, at the ratifying vote because they weren't a member in good standing. So there was contentious things like that going on. And I think like when I did my research, my feeling was more that like a lot of this was a pissing match between like the leadership of USCA curling, this Jeff Plush guy, and GNCC, and I tend to take the side of GNCC. They did more of the things that I thought were the curling way inappropriate, but
One note, just, and I haven't done a lot of research on this, and you may have already said it, but on the insurance end, albeit that might be the boring side, GNCC provided their own policy to their members, right?
Yes, they had been doing stuff like that even before USCA curling, but yeah, they had decided over the years that they would offer a lot of the same things that USCA curling did too. One of them being insurance. Yep.
And that's something they can do due to their sheer size, I'm assuming.
Yeah, they had, whatever, 6,000 members, so they could get the same, I think essentially the same rates that USCA curling would get. Like, you go in, it's like, what's the difference between having 6,000 and 10,000 people for insurance?
4,000.
Yeah, okay. I'm talking on the rate. But, at that point, you've probably already buffed out all of your economies of scale, right? So, after that, there were a lot of other clubs. So this is a really contentious period to be like online. There were a lot of clubs that decided like, hey, we didn't like how USCA handled the sexual abuse allegations and the investigation with Jeff Plush. We didn't like how they treated GNCC. We agree with GNCC's stand that like, we're not getting everything that we're paying for with the USCA curling. And so there are a lot of clubs that left the USCA curling and left their regional bodies and became like members at large. So at that point, GNCC and USCA curling were both like tripping over themselves after October of 2020 to make it easy for clubs to either sign up with them or continue on. I think if you look at GNCC, USCA curling was accusing them of like trying to swipe members, and GNCC was saying, well, no, we're just trying to support people. Like we're not approaching clubs to come join us. If they approach us, we will let them join. We'll be inclusive, but we're not trying to like headhunt everybody from USCA curling. That's not our goal, right? But that was the feeling there. And then the same thing. So USCA curling was allowing clubs to be members at large. So then they came up with a membership at large. So if you weren't part of a regional body, you could still be part of USCA. So there's clubs like, Broomstone, big prestigious club on the East Coast too. They're in the GNCC and they're in the USCA curling. So they were a member at large with USCA. So their curlers could still compete in like national events, but they were also paying GNCC. So they were kind of, double dipping, right? So there's a lot of stuff like that went on. And I think the good thing for us, because we got through a lot of the drama there, is that, we have more options now. Because, like, if we really wanted to leave USCA curling, GNCC's there, and we could sign up with them, and we could get our insurance through them. It'd be a little bit different. It might be a little bit more, it might be a little bit less, but, like, we have another option. If you were a smaller club, too, like, let's say you're an arena club, or you don't have all the equipment, like, GNCC has programs to, purchase, borrow, use that equipment. Same thing, USCA curling does the same thing, right? So I think that a little bit of competition is great, in this case, because, we did have these legitimate issues, problems with leadership. And now, we changed our membership model here. USCA curling's changed it twice in the last, 3 years, right, Clay? We've had two big shakeups, because when I started, insurance was separate and membership was separate. Yeah. And then the first thing in, 2021, they made it so insurance and membership were all rolled into one, correct?
Yeah, the resulting cost difference wasn't significant, but each year it was a slight, over the course of 2 or 3 iterations, they combined them, and then after the GNCC issue, they completely changed up the membership model and offered various prompt pay discounts, a different way of paying per sheet as opposed to per member. It got fairly complicated in the end. Yeah,
and so for our viewers here, if I remember, the current membership model is there's tiers to individual membership. So you can have like a basic curler membership, a competitor's membership, like a competitor's plus membership, and those all go up in price. And then at the club level, we as a club have to pay like $500 or $750 per sheet we have. So based on the size of your club, you pay a little bit more if you're a bigger club, less if you're a smaller one. And then they give the discounts and rebates for like paying on time or paying late or whatever.
We should get a discount for not being regulation size.
We should get a discount because our sheets are not regulation width.
Sheet 1 being slightly out of condition.
Well, sheet one has extra space because it's on a hill, so that makes the surface area a little bit bigger. The hypotenuse being longer than the legs of the triangle.
And the main impact to us on that one is, as we've noted it before, with the prompt pay discounts, they're not insignificant. So we do actually have to push members to sign up earlier than they're used to, which isn't an overall bad thing. It's just a stressor on everybody to get their things together before we're actually ready to curl.
Well, and the only thing I'm not a big fan of right now with how our membership is structured is that the reason it's about the same price as it was, like, let's just, in 2019, is because they're offering these rebates. What was the rebates were like for the prompt pay and that kind of stuff, but like those aren't guaranteed to last forever. So my concern at this moment is that like in 2025, those rebates will be gone and we'll be back to have like, not only are we paying the same, we're paying more. We're still getting the same amount of benefit, which, you can tell the way I talk about it, is not a lot for us here, But part of that is we don't take advantage of everything because we're not pushing for it. So, whose fault is that? But
it was kind of going to be a part of my question there for you guys was, do you think it hurts clubs our size and smaller in a way to offer those rebate programs, though? Like, we don't start our season until December, and they want membership dues and everything paid at the end of November.
Yeah, I don't know how they pick those dates, to be honest.
I think they go off the big ones.
I
they
think
look at the big ones that have been curling for a couple months.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, the bigger clubs it doesn't really affect because they're already curling at the start of November.
Mm-hmm.
It's the smaller clubs that it puts the stressor in that. That said, and I haven't really thought about this, who, from the new membership model, deadlines aside, who does this? Who gets screwed in this and who gets the benefit from the way it's structured with paying per sheet as opposed to the old membership model? Is this giving the larger clubs an advantage or the smaller ones?
Interesting.
That's a tough question to answer because there's a lot of large clubs with a lot of members that have the same amount of sheets as us.
Yeah, and I would have to we'd have to get the specifics up again to say better or worse. We did the math for us and we're pretty much dead on for what we used to pay
because
compared to how we pay now. So
do we pay per sheet and per member?
Yes, we do both. Yep. So they have it kind of structured two ways. You pay per head and then you also pay by club size, which is based on sheets. Yep.
Sure thing. Well, I would and then with the old model, is it being strictly per member? Yeah, I guess when you look at it in this sense, we would be at a disadvantage under the new model because we have proportionally more sheets than we have members.
Yeah, well, I suppose you just hit the nail on the head there. So really, it just depends on like what's your member to sheet density ratio. As for like, are you paying more or less? Those are the only two factors. Which right. I don't know. It's
if you compare us to Bismarck, like if you would compare us to Bismarck, we would have more. We have one more sheet and probably have not half the members, but significantly less.
Mm-hmm. Yep. What else do we need to cover here with this issue? And we did the Fallout. Like, I mean, there's been good things that have shaken out of this. Like, I really like this guy. I'm gonna butcher his name, and he was a famous curler, but Dean Gemmell, Gemmell, however you pronounce it. He seems like he's a pretty straight shooter. I usually see his communications when he publishes like a press release, and I read them, and I go, yeah, okay, I like that our membership model is at least a little bit more focused on small clubs. I think a big complaint for a lot of people over the years is that USCA curling, unless you were a top tier level athlete who competed at televised events, there wasn't a whole lot that you would see back, from being a part of the body. But, part of it is that's what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to facilitate those kinds of things as well. But just, what are you spending your money on? Where's it going? Where's the effort and the time? But, yeah.
Well, I think the tough thing, too, it was just a whirlwind of bad events for the USCA. There was a lot going on in a short amount of time. And the sad thing there is two sad things, I should say, is when it comes to allegations like that, they do get kicked under the rug until it becomes an issue. And you've seen it with the U.S. gymnastic team. You see it in Hockey Canada right now. It's going on.
Yep.
And we're talking about teams from back in 2013, 14, 15, 16. And now it's an issue. Why was it not an issue at the first place?
Yeah. Well, I think you should always try and do something, right? Even if you're late to the game, like try to do the right thing.
You have to.
Great. But I think that's another good point too. The stuff that Jeff Plush was accused of, that was all like 3 years before he even took the job at USCA curling. So there's a good chance that he did everything he was supposed to right.
Right.
You know, as far as that goes. Like, he never had a single problem, was proactive. You know, I don't know those things for sure. But, you know, I tend to think they're true, though, as well, because he was under all of this scrutiny, and we didn't hear anything else about, like, well, he did this wrong. It's always like, he didn't participate in this old investigation. He didn't do the right things when he was in his previous job. So, like, you know, let's get rid of him and try somebody new, because, you know, he's the CEO of the organization, right? Like, that's the kind of person you want in that job. You know, we can go find somebody new. So.
Right. And then I do have one more question for both you guys. I'd like to hear both of your opinions on it. Is, do you think and the membership structure it's not a bad structure by no means. This is clearly just opinion based now. Do you think it would benefit small clubs to go the way of the Grand National and just kind of become their own entity?
I would say no. My personal thought is, and we haven't touched on this, and I haven't mentioned it, and you guys didn't prepare, so I feel like I should say something here. You know, USCA Curling has made a big push to be more responsive and hear more input from their small clubs, because that was a big complaint. And a lot of clubs said, hey, you know, we feel like we don't have a seat at the table. You know, it's hard to get our views through our regional body to USCA Curling. So now they have, I want to see a quarterly member meeting where every club can elect one man and one woman to like represent their club, and like the CEO is on there, and they talk about like things that are going on and like look for input and recommendations and feedback on their policies and procedures. You know, not that they have like a vote on the board as a small club, but they are trying to do a lot more to let those little clubs, you know, we're not a little club, but we're a medium-sized one, right?
Husky medium, yeah.
You know, and Lynn Watson, our president here, I think he's actually been participating in those, because he talks about them, you know, like at our board meetings and stuff. So I think that those little things are great there. You know, whether, you know, it's better for a club to be part of USCA or GNCC, that's probably going to depend on who you talk to, you know, and what their bias is. I think you should be a part of something, though, because you do get something, and it is good to give back. Even if you get nothing from the organization, those bodies are pushing the sport forward, you know. So that's my... Clay, what do you got?
Yeah, what do you think, Clay?
Well, the short one, the immediate answer is like, we need insurance. How much can we get it for it versus how much are they providing? Yeah. That's an easy thing to calculate, but it also leaves out a lot of other things. I mean, when you're all under one umbrella, like USA Curling, they are providing benefits. I mean, and just think about the media coverage and the organization of all these. And when you completely split up and become disorganized, yeah, you could say that USA Curling is not providing your own individual club with a benefit, but when it comes to the general outreach and bringing people's awareness to curling, that has to come from somewhere, and by and large, it usually doesn't happen at a big enough scale from individual clubs.
Yep.
I mean, I don't know exactly, but I have to think that USA Curling is involved with some of the Olympic coverage.
Yeah, I mean, they're the ones that are like...
And they're the ones...
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, and also as the U.S. rep, when everything is decided, when you're trying to organize a curling event. So they are providing many services that we don't see. It isn't just as simple as the immediate benefits.
Yeah,
So
I think it's like paying your taxes, right? Like, I pay my taxes and I go, you know, I gave thousands of dollars to Uncle Sam, and like my road in front of my house has potholes in it. And you're like, well, you know, they used some of that money to fix roads. Sorry, it wasn't the one in front of your house. You know, like, for what your benefit you're getting back.
You give some, you get some, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think a lot of good points made there. A lot of good information too on something that a lot of our members probably maybe have followed a little bit loosely, but
yeah, you probably heard like a couple things about it, you know, unless you were like in the weeds on, you know, Reddit curling forums.
Yeah.
You know, when would you have gotten to hear all this? And it was quite juicy. You know, I was more kicking back because like I was like, well, we're gonna stick, you know, we're gonna have insurance. It doesn't really matter what's going on with these guys. So I was more watching it passively, you know. So it was quite entertaining to watch play out.
But I imagine we're getting here tight on time. So
yeah, this is gonna be our longest one. We're at 42 minutes.
Oh, look at that. Okay, so last question I have. We're going to let Clay go here shortly. Clay, you said you were going for Mexican food. Are you going burrito or chimichanga?
Fajita.
No, I'm gonna do a combo of everything.
Love a combo platter.
All right. Yeah. Get it, man. All right, Clay. Well, thank you for taking time out of your busy day down in Texas, home of all my exes. George Strait song.
I know. Oh, I know.
I just heard him sigh. I had to do it one time. All right, Clay. Thank you very much.
Wait, Clay. I got one last question for you. Do you know the Reba McEntire song where she's singing about being a poor girl and her mom is going to send her uptown to go make friends with the man?
Basically pimping her out.
Yeah, and she says,
Yes.
"This one stop, don't let me down." What's the girl's name in that song? What does she say her name is?
Fancy.
Okay.
Fancy.
Yeah.
All right, so I've been hearing that Clancy for 32 or 33 years, however old I am. And Nolan told me yesterday that it was Fancy, so it's been stuck in my head for a day. Now, hopefully yours too. So.
Yeah. He looked like I flushed his goldfish after.
He did. I was like, well, Fancy's not a regular name. Clancy's a name. Clancy's. And what I should have known, it's the name of the song too, is Fancy.
It's fancy.
Okay,
yes.
I'll let you go now. Sorry.
All right, Clay.
Sorry.
You might have been born plain white trash, but Clay was your name.
Clay was your
Thank
name.
you for joining us. We'll see you next week, buddy.
See you guys. Sorry I didn't have a song pun at the ready.
All right, take her easy, bud. Bye.
Bye.